You live in a world where fire is effortless. A flick of your thumb, flame roars to life. A twist of the wrist, warmth, comfort, light. And you believe it will always be that way. But history remembers differently. There were times when the absence of fire meant death, when matches didn't exist, when lighters failed, and survival came down to skill, not luck. Vikings sailing frozen seas carried something more valuable than gold. A simple flint, a shard of steel, and a secret passed through generations. How to create fire from nothing. Today you'll master a technique older than empires. A method proven for 5,000 years without plastic, without fuel, without chance. Because when the systems fail, it won't be comfort that saves you. It will be memory. It will be skill. So ask yourself, when the darkness falls, can you make fire? In the Middle Ages, survival was not a given. One snowstorm, one rotten harvest, one slip of judgment, and death followed. Not because people were weaker, but because the world was harsher. Every villager, every traveler, every warrior understood one simple truth. Survival was never about comfort. It was about memory, about the knowledge that passed from generation to generation, carved into bones, not books. There was no electricity, no engines, no emergency numbers, only bare hands, only fire, only stone, only skill. They built shelter from nothing. They lit fires and storms. They kept going because they had to. Today we live differently. We flick switches. We press buttons. We believe comfort is permanent. But systems fail. Power dies. Help doesn't come. And when that happens, it won't be money that saves you. It won't be comfort. It will be the skills your ancestors once knew: how to read the land, how to build warmth from cold, how to stay alive when the world turns its back. This is not nostalgia. This is survival. Technique 1. Flint and steel. Fire was survival. In the Middle Ages, without fire, people didn't just suffer, they died. Vikings knew this. Monks knew this. Pilgrims crossing forests for months knew this. That's why every traveler carried one thing more precious than gold: a flint, a shard of high-carbon steel, and char cloth. This simple kit, the flint and steel, was the spark of civilization. No matches, no lighters, no shortcuts, just pure skill. Archaeologists have found flint sets perfectly preserved in 1,000-year-old graves, because without them, death was certain. The technique is brutal in its simplicity. Strike steel against flint at the right angle. Sparks explode, burning hotter than 800 Vladrese. But sparks alone don't make fire. They need to land on something alive, something ready. That's where char cloth comes in. Medieval char cloth was linen half-burned in sealed tins. It caught sparks, instantly holding the ember, feeding it, keeping it alive, even in storms, even in freezing rain. Today, most people wouldn't last one cold night without modern tools. But with this ancient skill, you hold survival in your hands. How long could you last? If your lighter failed, could you create fire from nothing? The process demands precision. The steel must be sharp, carbon-rich, angled perfectly. The flint must be real, collected from rivers, beaches, or cliffs. The char cloth must be pure, blackened but intact, ready to catch life. One spark, one breath, and fire is born. This wasn't magic. It was survival refined over centuries. And today, it still works. Because true survival isn't built on gadgets. It's built on memory, on skill, on fire. Technique 2. Lean-to shelter. In the medieval wilderness, shelter meant survival. Without it, people didn't last the night. One cold rain, one windstorm, one night without cover. And hypothermia claimed lives silently. That's why medieval travelers, pilgrims, and woodsmen mastered the lean-to shelter. A structure built entirely from what the forest provided. Fast, efficient, life-saving. It began with 3 strong branches, lashed together into a tripod. The frame created stability, even when no trees stood nearby. Next came layers of smaller branches, leaned tightly forming the shelter's spine, but structure alone wasn't enough. Medieval survivors knew insulation saved lives. They gathered green ferns, thick, dense water shedding, layer after layer from ground to roof, each sheet overlapping the last. The result, a living wall that repelled wind and rain. Inside they built a floor, birch bark first, then dry pine needles. A thick layer that lifted the body above cold, wet soil. Heat wasn't just about fire, it was about what you slept on. The door faced away from the wind. A woven barrier closed it tight. Even in brutal winters, this shelter kept people alive, night after night. How would you survive? If your modern tent shredded in a storm, could you survive one cold night? If modern gear failed, would you know how to build protection with nothing but forest materials? The lean-to isn't pretty, it isn't comfortable, but it works. It creates the one thing nature never offers for free: a pocket of warmth, a fragile sanctuary in the wilderness. And when the systems fail, this ancient knowledge may be the only roof between you and the cold. Technique 3. Medieval waterproofing. In the medieval wilderness, water was both life and death. Rain soaked through everything. Cold seeped into bones. Without protection, people didn't just shiver. They died. That's why in Novgorod in Lapland, across ancient forests, survivors turned to one material: birch bark, a natural waterproofing used for centuries. Birch bark is not ordinary wood. It resists water by nature. Its waxy layers repel moisture like living armor. People stripped bark from fallen or dead birch trees, never from living ones. Because survival was about respect as much as necessity, they used birch bark to cover shelter roofs, to line the ground under sleeping mats, to craft primitive rain cloaks that kept them dry in endless storms. Even today, birch bark outperforms many modern materials. It doesn't rot easily, it insulates, it breathes, and in the wild, it never fails. What would you do if your high-tech Gore-Tex ripped apart? Would you know how to find waterproofing that doesn't rely on factories or plastic? The process is simple. Cut clean sheets from dead birch trunks, layer them like shingles, each piece overlapping the next, on roofs, on floors, on bodies. Birch bark builds barriers where none existed. In medieval times, people didn't wait for rescue, they acted. And birch bark, simple, ancient, perfect, saved lives. It still can, because when systems break down, nature remembers, nature provides, nature survives. Survival is never an accident. It's never luck. It's memory. For thousands of years, ordinary people, without technology, without systems, kept themselves alive, not because they were stronger, not because they were smarter, but because they remembered what mattered: how to trap heat, how to stay dry, how to keep the fire burning when everything else failed. Today, we've forgotten. We live in warmth, in comfort, in illusion. We believe the grid will always hold. We believe help will always come. But history says otherwise. There will come a time when systems fail, when power dies, when comfort disappears. And in that moment, it won't be money that saves you. It won't be strength. It will be memory. It will be skill. It will be what you know before the cold arrives. It will be the preparation you made long before disaster strikes. So ask yourself, if the lights go out tonight, would you know how to survive? Learn these skills. Practice before you need them. And pass them on, because survival spreads through memory, not luck.